This tutorial is designed to show you how you might use this particular online math lesson from the National Library of Virtual Manipulatives to help your students get a sort of conceptual understanding of slope-intercept form and point-slope form. Many of you might be familiar with the National Library of Virtual Manipulatives already. They have a wonderful selection of different interactive applets that allow students to see different aspects of algebra and geometry and probability and statistics. But what the eNLVM does is they actually integrate some of those manipulatives into online lessons that students can step through at their own pace. And so the one that I'd like to show you today, if you click through on the URL that's in the lesson plan, if you land on this page with the different courses, you can instruct students to click on Algebra 1, and then on the page that appears at the very bottom, there's a lesson that's called Writing Equations of Lines. And so this is probably the least open-ended of the types of technology tools that I like to use in my classroom. Many of the tools that I choose to use are very open-ended in that they can be used for many different topics, many different grade levels, for many different purposes. This is actually very specific. It assumes that students know about linear equations in a very basic way, and that they know how to find the slope of a line, they know about x-intercepts and y-intercepts and how to find the coordinates of those intercepts. And so there are three main parts to this online lesson. The first is just a review of intercepts and slope. And so for students, you would want to have them start with this link here. And what pops up in the main part of the screen here on sort of the left side of the page is an actual graph with a line. And as you can see here, you would need to have Java installed on the computers for this to work. Nearly all modern web browsers and computers have Java installed, so that shouldn't be a problem. And over on the right side is the actual sort of content or instruction in this online lesson. This is just a very basic review. If you take a look at the drop-down box here, it's just going to ask students three very basic questions to make sure they understand how to find the coordinates of the y-intercept, how to find the coordinates of the x-intercept, and then how to find the slope of a given line. And so the way that this works, and it's a little bit different than the main part of the lesson, is that students will need to see, well, y-intercept, if this is the y-axis, then it looks like it is at -2. And so students can type in their answer, and then instead of hitting submit answer, they can actually check. And so the lesson will tell the student whether the answer is correct, incorrect, or whether this is not quite the format that the lesson was expecting the answer to be in. So if the student clicks check here, you can see that an ordered pair was expected rather than just a single value. And so instead of getting frustrated, hopefully students will understand what's being asked of them and they can change their answer accordingly. So the ordered pair of this y-intercept would be at 0, -2. So this is just a very basic sort of warm-up so students can kind of see what it is they're going to be expected to do. And this particular eNLVM site is designed for teachers to create kind of a whole sort of mini curriculum for a class, and they can actually pick and choose lessons that they want their students to work on. Since this is likely to be the only lesson that you'll do from eNLVM with your students, you don't necessarily have to go through that whole process. But what this is showing you over here on the right is that this would be what would be recorded in the software, and you could see whether it matches up with what the answer on the key is. So students can step through this, they can answer questions about y-intercept, x-intercept, and finding slope, but the real bulk of the content here, if we click on the contents button to go back to sort of the index, is working with slope-intercept form and point-slope formula. And so if we click on slope-intercept form, this is the first sort of main part of our lesson. The format is the same as sort of the warm-up. There's different instructions, different questions that are being asked over here in the right sidebar, and using the different sort of manipulatives that are available at the eNLVM site, students can actually see what happens when they change the slope of a line. They see that the coefficient there of the x value changes, or if they change the y-intercept. And so students can use these manipulatives to help answer questions over here on the right sidebar. So since you aren't probably going to use the whole curriculum and course registration options for your students, these answers will not be recorded for you to look at sort of a dashboard or at a later time. And so as students go through the activity, if they have a notebook that they normally keep for your class, you might consider them having write down their answers in their notebook so you can go back and check those at a later point, because some students may just have they may choose to just fly right through this, type in whatever, and click on submit their answers. And so you do want to verify that students are using the lesson appropriately and making sure that they're getting the conceptual understanding that they need. As students go through the lesson, you can see that there are different aspects of working with slope-intercept form. There are actually 7 different pages in this particular lesson. And one of them, number 5 here, which we'll take a look at, it actually asks students to practice on 3 different situations. And so again, if students are just kind of turned loose on their own, they may just try and fly right through this and not try at least 3 of these. And so at the very least, you would want them to record somehow which of the 3 that they chose, whether they got these correct or not. So this is something that you'll need to decide based on your procedures in your classroom, how you'll check to verify that students have actually understood what they need to from the activity. The other main part of this is on point slope form. And it's actually a little bit more involved. There's some more pages on this one, not just to be able to write equations in point slope form, but also be able to convert back and forth between point slope and slope intercept form. And there again, there's a number of different practice pages on here where you'll need to make sure that students are actually practicing what they should using the online interactive graph on the page. And at the very end, once students are finished with this, it depends on what grade level you're working with and the ability of your students. Each of these may take anywhere between 25 and maybe 50 minutes or an hour to go through. But once students have completed all this, there is a quiz. And again, these results are not being recorded anywhere for you to go back and look at afterwards. And so you might have students either type out their answers and submit them to you, or actually write out their answers and submit them to you for you to grade or to look at. And so there are, on the little mini quiz, there are 5 different pages. Some of them have more than one answer box at a time. But this is just to verify that students have learned what they need to about slope and y-intercept. So as I said at the start, this is not necessarily a very sort of open-ended activity. There are very interesting manipulatives that students can work with to try and better understand the ideas of slope and a slope-intercept form and point slope form. But in order for this to make sense to students, they do need to have kind of a conceptual understanding of what real-world situations would result in linear equations and how to determine the slope of a line and how to find the y-intercepts for this to be useful. So as long as your students kind of have the correct prerequisite understanding for this and they are reasonably responsible and you figure out a way for them to record their work for you to check at a later point, this is a very useful activity for you to use with your students.